Hi everyone, welcome back to It's Not Just You, the podcast where we talk about neurodiversity in a way that is understandable. I'm Shania, and today I want to talk about a question that a lot of neurodivergent people ask themselves at some point in their lives. How did nobody notice? For a lot of people, receiving a diagnosis or learning about neurodiversity can be a huge relief. It can explain years of confusion and answer questions they've been carrying around for a long time. At the same time, it often leads to another question. If the signs were there all along, why did it take so long for anyone to recognize them? When people hear words like ADHD, autism, or dyslexia, they often picture very specific stereotypes. ADHD is imagined as someone who cannot sit still. Autism is imagined as someone who doesn't talk much or someone who avoids social interaction. And dyslexia is often reduced to the idea of mixing up letters. These stereotypes are so common that they shape how people think neurodiversity is supposed to look. The problem is that real people rarely fit perfectly into these expectations. Many neurodivergent children grow up knowing that something feels different, even if they don't have the words to describe it. They may notice that paying attention in class seems harder for them than it does for their classmates. They may feel overwhelmed by sounds, lights, or crowded spaces that other people don't really notice or give much attention to. They might spend hours trying to complete assignments that their friends finish in a fraction of the time. Because these experiences are normal to them, they often assume that everyone else is dealing with the same challenges. Imagine being told to focus on a task and finding that your thoughts immediately jump in 5 different directions. You want to pay attention, but your brain seems determined to think about everything except the thing that's in front of you. Now, imagine this happening every day. Someone on the outside might see distraction and assume you aren't trying. What they don't see is the constant effort required to bring your attention back over and over again. This is one reason neurodiversity can be difficult to recognize. Many of the challenges are invisible. People see the result, but not the process. They see the late assignment, the forgotten homework, or the unfinished project. But what they don't see is the student who spent hours trying to get started, become distracted repeatedly, and then felt frustrated because they couldn't understand why something that seemed so simple for everyone else felt so difficult for them. The same thing can happen with autism. One of the biggest misconceptions about autism is that all autistic people behave in the same way. In reality, autism exists on a spectrum, which means that people's experiences can vary enormously. Some autistic people are very social and enjoy spending time with friends. Some are excellent communicators, and others develop strategies that help them navigate social situations so effectively that the people around them never really realize how much effort is involved. A concept that comes up pretty frequently in conversations about autism is something called masking. Masking refers to the process of consciously or unconsciously hiding traits that might make someone stand out. An autistic student might carefully observe how their classmates behave and then imitate those behaviors in order to fit in. They may rehearse conversations beforehand, force themselves to maintain eye contact even when it feels uncomfortable, or suppress behaviors that help them regulate stress. From the outside, masking can make it look like everything is fine, everything is okay. Teachers, friends, and even family members may have no idea how much energy is being spent just trying to appear quote-unquote normal. The result is that many people don't receive support because their struggles aren't obvious. Instead of recognizing the effort involved, others assume that if someone looks fine, they must be fine. Another reason signs are missed is that people often expect difficulties to affect every area of a person's life. In reality, someone can be highly successful in one area while struggling significantly in the other. A student might earn excellent grades but spend a lot more time completing assignments than their students. They might appear organized because they've created elaborate systems to compensate for the challenges with memory or attention. And their achievements can unintentionally hide the difficulties that they're experiencing. This is especially true for people who develop strong coping strategies at an early age. If a student learns how to work around their challenges, adults may assume that there isn't a problem. The coping strategy becomes visible while the reason for needing it remains hidden. Over time, that can create a situation where someone is constantly working harder than the people around them without understanding why. Dyslexia provides another example of how stereotypes can get in the way of understanding. Many people still associate dyslexia primarily with reversing letters or reading words incorrectly. While those experiences can occur, dyslexia is much more complicated than that. It affects how the brain processes written language, and it can show up in many different ways. A person with dyslexia might be incredibly creative, curious, and intelligent while still finding reading and spelling unusually difficult. Because intelligence and reading ability are often unfairly linked together, some students begin to question their own abilities when they struggle with language-based tasks. They may wonder, why can they understand a concept perfectly when it's explained verbally, but have a lot of difficulty expressing the same idea in writing? Without an explanation, these struggles can feel personal. Instead of recognizing a difference in how their brain processes information, they may assume that they're simply not good enough. One of the most important things to understand about neurodiversity is that differences are not deficits. Neurodivergent brains are not broken versions of neurotypical brains. They process information differently, and those differences can come with both challenges and strengths. The goal isn't to decide which type of brain is better. The goal is to understand that there's more than one way for a human brain to work. Unfortunately, when people don't understand these differences, they often create explanations that are inaccurate and sometimes harmful. A child who struggles with attention may be labeled as lazy. A child who becomes overwhelmed by sensory input may be described as dramatic or overly sensitive. And a child who has difficulty with social situations might be called shy or rude or uninterested. And these labels can stick with people for years, shaping how they see themselves long before they understand what is actually happening. And that is why early recognition matters. Recognizing signs of neurodiversity isn't about putting people in boxes or assigning labels for the sake of it. It's about giving people access to information, support, and understanding. When someone understands how their brain works, they can begin developing strategies that genuinely help them, instead of constantly trying to force themselves into systems that weren't designed for them. It's also important to remember that not every difficulty means someone is neurodivergent. Everyone gets distracted sometimes, everyone feels anxious sometimes, and everyone forgets things occasionally. The difference often comes down to frequency, intensity, and how much those experiences affect daily life. That's why professional assessment and guidance are extremely important when there are concerns. What all of this comes back to is empathy. When we recognize that different brains experience the world in different ways, we become less likely to make assumptions. Instead of asking why someone isn't trying harder, we start asking what challenges they might be facing. Instead of judging behavior at the surface level, we become curious about what's happening underneath it. For many neurodivergent people, finally learning why they think, learn, or experience the world differently can be life-changing. It doesn't erase the challenges that they faced, but it often replaces years of self-doubt with understanding. Suddenly, experiences that once seemed very confusing to begin with, they start to make sense. And the questions change from what's wrong with me to why does my brain work this way? It sparks curiosity. And for many people, that shift makes all the difference. If you've ever found yourself wondering why certain things seem harder for you than they do for anyone else, then you're not alone. And if you're someone trying to better understand a friend or a classmate, family member, or student, remember that what you see on the surface is only part of the story. Each person has experiences that aren't immediately visible, and understanding those experiences is often the first step toward creating a more supportive environment and a more supportive world. Thank you for listening to It's Not Just You. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with someone you might know who might find it helpful, and check out the other episodes we have. And as always, remember that being different doesn't mean you're broken. Different doesn't mean less. And if you've ever felt misunderstood, it's not just you. See you next time. Bye.